Well, the NBA offseason is here. Welcome to the third annual James Harden trade request. He is going to leave the 76ers, and we've already got a list of teams that might be interested. So, after months of everybody basically assuming that he was going to return to Houston in free agency, lately, the last week or two, that noise has died down a lot. Seems like the Rockets are wanting to go in a different direction. They'd probably rather give money to some different free agents, maybe some younger players. They didn't want to commit a long-term deal to James Harden, and honestly, I can't blame them, given his history over the past couple of years. We'll talk about that. But man, he's going to leave the Sixers via an opt into his contract. So he had a player option for $35.6 million, as Woj says here, and they're going to trade him somewhere else. He specifically name drops the Clippers and the Knicks. There's a couple of other teams that we've already heard, but wow, James Harden's going to be traded, and I guess it shouldn't be shocking considering his history, but here we are. So yeah, from Harden's perspective, it seems like the Sixers were unwilling to commit on a long-term contract. I think he's looking for like a 4-year max or somewhere close to the max, right? 4 years, 180, $200 million, something close to that. That's a lot of money for a 33-year-old guard who has dealt with some injury issues the past couple of years, and has a reputation of disappearing in the playoffs. It looked like Philly, I guess they just wanted to go in a different direction. You know, they've been a team that's kind of been ramming their head into the wall in the Eastern Conference playoffs the last couple of years. They've been good, but never great, never good enough to get over the hump. Running out of time with Joel Embiid, potentially a trade request from him on the horizon. I guess we'll see about that. But it makes sense for them to want to go in a different direction, not want to pay Harden a lot of money. Him opting in gives them an opportunity to get some assets back. They might get a couple of picks out of this, maybe a decent player to kind of restructure this roster a little bit, but we're going to see another iteration of the 76ers with a different supporting cast around Joel Embiid and probably give it one more year, maybe 2 more tries at this. And if things don't go well, then we could potentially be seeing a blow-it-up scenario. But that's, for down the road. We're assuming that the Sixers are going to stay in contention, try to keep Joel Embiid, and rebuild this thing around him. I think that's a big reason why they were able to convince Harden to opt in and get some assets for him so that they can, try to kind of restructure this thing. Now, from Harden's perspective, he's a guy that's going to opt in now and try to go to a team that is willing to pay him that money. There's a couple of teams out there that are probably willing to extend him on a longer-term contract closer to the value that he wants. Philly was not willing to do that, so I think a couple of the teams that he wants to go to are the teams that were willing to pay him money. I think Houston was one of those, but they probably weren't interested, so now we're hearing some other names. First team on the list, the Los Angeles Clippers. Not surprising. We've heard that they are, looking to make a splash this offseason, make some changes, and they definitely have the optionality to do this. Number 1, Paul George. We have heard his name out there this offseason, potentially looking for a change of scenery. I don't know if that's initiated by him or initiated by the team, but regardless, Paul George's name has been out there in some trade rumors. So a George for Harden swap could definitely make some sense. I think in that scenario, the Sixers would actually have to throw in some extra salary because Harden's option is for $35 million. Paul George is under contract for $45 million. So the Sixers may have to throw in another player or two, but they could probably make that happen if they wanted. And then I'm not sure which side would be the one to throw in picks in this scenario. George for Harden, but both 33 years old, aging players, still pretty good. But who knows how much value each of those guys have at this point with their injury histories and everything all considered in. So you could potentially be looking at a Paul George for James Harden swap, 1-for-1. Obviously, like I said, Philly throwing in another player or two. Maybe one of the sides is doing picks. I really have no idea how that would shake out, but that could be an option. If you are wanting to hold on to Paul George and Kawhi Leonard and form a new big three, adding Harden into there, they cut Eric Gordon last night, so his contract is no longer on the books. Looked like they just wanted to get off that money because it was non-guaranteed. They're paying a ton of money for this roster anyway, so just wanted to get him off of there. But they do have these other contracts. Norman Powell, Marcus Morris, Robert Covington, Nicholas Batum, even Ivica Zubats. You package like 2 or 3 of those guys in, that's enough money to match for James Harden. Throw in a couple of draft picks as well. And I think you probably have a deal. So the Clippers are definitely a serious threat to watch here. Would not be shocked at all to see him end up in LA. It makes a ton of sense for both sides. They do have some draft picks in order to use here. They have some assets, so I would not be shocked for the Clippers to make a serious play for James Harden. The other team here, the New York Knicks, specifically mentioned by Woj. there's a couple of different options for a trade structure here with New York. You're assuming Jalen Brunson is going to be off the table. He was awesome for them last year. They just signed him. Julius Randle could definitely be an option. Trade Julius Randle. I think for Philly, that could potentially be intriguing. Maybe one of the better players you could end up getting back in a James Harden trade, a guy who is playing at an all-star level for the past couple of seasons, and he could potentially bring a different dimension to the Sixers. They'd be pretty big in the front court there, but I could see him fitting along Joel Embiid. So that's potentially an option there. Evan Fournier's contract is always going to be in conversation here. They signed him to big money with the purpose of trading him before this deal is over, so I would imagine that he's definitely on the table here if they're just going to do like a salary filler and picks type of deal, if that's what Philly is interested in. Mitchell Robinson, also a guy, he's on an extension now for around $15-16 million a season. This is actually decreasing in value over time. Don't really know how he fits in Philadelphia. Obviously, he'd probably be the backup big man off the bench for Joel Embiid, so I'm not sure how intriguing he would be, but money-wise, that kind of works. Derrick Rose, they declined that team option, so that's no longer an option to trade. He's going to be a free agent. Josh Hart opted in. I assume you want to hold on to him. He was a big piece. They traded for him last trade deadline. Even RJ Barrett could potentially be a guy that you would throw into a trade. He's entering his rookie extension now, getting a little bit better, starting to show some signs of improvement, getting a little bit better every single season. Pretty solid player. Probably not ever going to be like, a perennial all-star type of player. Might make a couple of all-star games in his career, but not going to be like on the level of a guy like Harden, obviously. But the age difference could potentially be intriguing if you're the Sixers, and you could add RJ Barrett to your core. I wouldn't be shocked if they tried to make a play for him. So those are some options there. Maybe Barrett plus Evan Fournier and a couple of picks, or you throw in like Julius Randle with Evan Fournier and then a couple of picks. Who knows? Isaiah Hartenstein, Obi Toppin, like all these guys could be options. We've heard Obi Toppin's name out there in trade talks this summer. Emmanuel Quickley as well. Those guys are both going to be looking for extensions on their rookie contracts this summer, so they could potentially be traded if the Knicks don't want to extend them there. Quentin Grimes, a younger guy who also has some value. So it would be interesting to see. I think the Knicks have a couple of different options in terms of potential trade packages. So it makes perfect sense, right? The two teams that were explicitly mentioned in this report, the Clippers and the Knicks, both of them have multiple options in a trade for James Harden, and it would make sense for both sides here. So I think those are definitely the two most likely teams. We've also heard the Phoenix Suns. I don't think this is possible. I mean, this cap sheet is obviously before they've made all their moves this offseason, but it's Durant, Booker, Ayton, and Bradley Beal. And then Ish Wainwright opted into that contract, and they still have Cameron Payne on a non-guarantee. And that's their roster right now. DeAndre Ayton, of course, is up for trade, but why is Philly trading for DeAndre Ayton? They have Joel Embiid on the roster. That doesn't make any sense. They trade, Phoenix has no picks left. Like we saw all the graphics after they made the Bradley Beal trade. No picks under team control until 2031. Some of those are pick swaps, obviously, so they will be actually drafting from now until then, but they don't have control of any of their picks. They can't trade anything. So it doesn't make any sense. There's no reason why Philadelphia would do this, so I'm throwing the Suns out the window. That's not going to happen. And then, looking around the league, who else could maybe be an option? Milwaukee is not completely off the table. Maybe you get a Drew Holiday swap. I think they're looking to maybe shake things up. I don't think that's out of the question, although I don't know if Harden would want to go there. Boston made their move already this offseason. I don't really see it. I mean, maybe there's a Malcolm Brogdon thing, or the nuclear option is a Jaylen Brown for Harden swap, but it's probably not going to happen. None of these other teams really make sense. Obviously, he's not going back to Brooklyn. They have assets, but he wouldn't go back there. Cleveland, no. Miami, if they miss out on Lillard, maybe, because he's not as long-term of a commitment. They're shopping Kyle Lowry. Probably maybe he wants to go home to Philly. So the Heat are also possible, although they don't have a ton of draft picks to offer. The Bulls, I mean, a lot of people thought they'd blow it up. Maybe they go in a different direction, try to add to this roster. I could maybe see it. Toronto, same diff. None of these tanking teams, I mean, some of these teams aren't tanking anymore, I guess. The Pacers are probably trying to make the playoffs next year. Maybe Orlando as well, but none of those teams really make any sense. Denver's obviously not going to do this. Memphis, no. Sacramento, I think it's on the table, but probably not. Phoenix, we talked about. The Clippers are a true contender for this. The Warriors, maybe you do a Chris Paul for Harden swap. You don't really want to keep Chris Paul on the team, but I mean, they have history with James Harden. Obviously, they had history with Chris Paul as well before they traded for him, so I guess that's a possibility. Lakers are always going to be an option for stars, but I don't know if they really have the picks to make this work. They have contracts that they could add up, I think, but they're going to be more focused on retaining their own guys, I think, with Austin Reeves, Rui Hachimura, stuff like that. Minnesota, probably not. Maybe there's like a Mike Conley thing that you can do. OKC, no, that doesn't really fit their timeline. New Orleans, it's possible, I guess. Dallas has been star hunting. They have Kyrie. Maybe they want to, put those guys back together again. But contract-wise, I mean, I guess you could probably do it. Like, they have Richaun Holmes now. You throw him in with, like, Tim Hardaway Jr. maybe. I don't know. Jazz, don't think so. Portland, that's an option. I think with Lillard is just going to want anybody they can get to come play there. I don't really know how they could make that work financially. I guess Anthony Simons would be the option there, or maybe you throw in like Nurkic, do a sign and trade with Jeremy Grant. I don't know. Houston, they would just sign him in free agency if they were going to get him, so that's probably that ship has sailed, I guess. And the Spurs, I don't think that they would really. That organization doesn't seem to fit James Harden, so there you go. Yeah, I mean, this is kind of unexpected, but also kind of completely expected. I mean, we figured he was most likely going to be changing teams this offseason. The mechanism of this is different. Right now, he is not necessarily picking where he's going to sign. He's going to be traded. Obviously, he has some sort of say in where he ends up going, but Daryl Morey likes to play hardball. He could essentially just send him wherever gives the best package. I wouldn't be shocked at that, so... I mean, we'll see. Clearly he's looking for money. James Harden is looking for money, so that's going to be what we're looking at this offseason. I think a trade could materialize fairly quickly. I mean, maybe by the time this video goes up, we have some more information. Because of the new CBA going into effect at the start of free agency, trades become a little bit harder to do at that time. So I think we could potentially see James Harden traded like tomorrow. I would not be shocked at that. Before free agency opens. I think there's some energy to move quickly here. But we'll see. As of now, this is what we're working with. And we'll be back with some more free agent stuff. I'll see you guys probably tomorrow.